So welcome everybody. It is 10 o'clock. We've got an hour's session on creating a brand, which you may on the surface of it think is about how do you design a logo. But actually we believe brand is more about the meaning behind logos rather than the logos themselves. I mean, if we're right, then that proves why an organization called Virgin could start flying aircraft, and why there was an organization called Carphone Warehouse. I'm going to switch to sharing my screen. Here we go. And of course I can't now see the controls, but there we go. So my name's Rob Harrison. I'm the 50% shareholder in Glued, along with David Wilson. We've been going 20 years. We started our business as a brand business, but we now do a kind of more strategic work around research, customer research, proposition building, and some strategic stroke tactical marketing. So we've got plenty of experience to build from and to share today. So if you've got any questions, please do shout out or do pop questions in the chat. Oh, we've got somebody else joining. How can I see them? Participants. Zenny. So welcome, Zenny. So yes, at the end of this, Zenny, welcome. Just to give you a heads up, we're recording this session. So if you'd rather not be seen or heard, then do just pop your comments in the chat and keep your camera off. So today's session, as I say, is on creating a brand, and it's more about the meaning behind a brand than necessarily what it looks like. Could somebody just confirm that they can see the shared screen with introductions on in the chat, or pop a thumb up or something? I'd be grateful. I haven't heard anything to the contrary and can't see anything to the contrary, so I assume it's okay. If there are any problems, do just shout out or pop it in the chat. So I think I've mentioned who I am, Glued. We've got a long experience in brand and marketing. Just a bit of housekeeping. If we end up, thank you, Peter. If we end up sharing details, sharing information, sharing emotive stuff, then please, and sharing for that matter commercially sensitive stuff, as well as emotionally sensitive, let's keep it confidential, keep things open if we can, but treat each other with respect, and treat this as kind of Chatham House rules. What we say in this Zoom room ought to stay here. And then let's move on to start to look at branding. And what we're trying to get at today is, I think for many people it can be obvious, but for many people it's not that obvious. All too often when people expound about their business, they say what their business does, which makes sense. You know, that does give context, but it doesn't provide a reason to engage or sell. So here's an example where somebody's simply stating that they're an IT services solutions company. You can trust them, which you'd expect of an IT services business, and you'd expect of any business trading. So it's kind of goes without saying. So really this website is only saying what the business does, and nothing more. Whereas with this organization, IT support that lets you, the entrepreneurial generation, have fun getting your work done from everywhere. So here it's a little bit more ambitious, and they're talking a little bit more about what and how they do what they do. So how they go about delivering IT services. And so there's a bit more value here, a bit more reason to potentially engage with them. I've just seen, sorry, there's a couple of points in the chat. Oh, yes. Yeah, thank you for confirming you can see it. And then the third example is nearer where we want to be, which is these two organizations. One is saying success through technology. The other one, which I prefer in a way, it's personal preference, IT your whole company will love. So here there's a far more ambitious approach to how they're presenting their brand. And they're talking about not only what, how, but also why they do what they do. So on the left, Air IT, they're doing it to help businesses succeed. And on the right, Ripple, they're doing it so people get a buzz out of IT, so that they enjoy it rather than perhaps find it a burden or a challenge. So just to go through a little bit of theory on this, we're going to follow this set of semicircles to help guide us through how to get to a meaningful proposition for our own businesses that we can then reflect in a brand. Our argument is that it's that proposition that's most important. How you choose to present it doesn't really matter, providing you do it consistently and you do it ambitiously. Hence why I use the example of Carphone Warehouse, a very successful mobile for a time, a very successful mobile telephone company that's name was actually totally at odds with what it did. And also, I think positioning that was probably a bit cheap given what they were delivering. So their proposition was not hindered by the look and feel. So what we're saying is it's the proposition that matters more than the look and feel. And all too often when we are asked, what do, we of course say, I'm in marketing or I'm in IT. And of course that makes some sense. But as I say, it doesn't give any real reason why we should engage further with an organization. And if we then ask the question, well, how do you do what you do? It's tempting to perhaps talk about the process that we go through in order to deliver what we're doing. Whereas actually what we're asking this question for is, how do you do it in a way that is different from your competitors, that is valuably different from your competitors? And in much the same way that that I was saying here, the guys on the right are talking about success. The guys on the left are talking about how to actually get some joy out of marketing, out of IT. So that's their difference. And then the why is usually an emotive reason for why the organization has ended up existing, or for why an individual has ended up working in the field that they've ended up choosing working in. And the example I use is from an IT business that we've worked with in the past. And you wouldn't ordinarily connect their why with IT. Their why, driven by the fact that they came from a broken home, and that they, despite being the younger sibling of two, ended up being effectively the carer for the mother, and who was having psychological issues with respect to the breakup, and also the carer for her other sibling because she couldn't cope with the circumstances. So she ended up making everything right for the people around her. This meant that her approach to life was about having a positive impact with whomever she comes in contact with. So that's her why. And that meant that her approach to IT was about helping people make friends with technology, rather than it being a burden or a tussle, a fight, a conflict. And that then drove into the way she delivered that to her, or the way she presented that to her clients, is wanting to make IT do good. And that then gave her a far more differentiated brand than she would otherwise have had. And by understanding where that came from, it imbues meaning to how she goes about doing, as well as what she is doing, which would otherwise not be there. And it helps, on the one hand, it helps sell that. So it gives a reason why people should engage and buy and consider her services. But it also helps select out organizations that she's unlikely to be able to do good work with. So if she were approached, or if there were an organization that was just purely out for profit, just wanted to make sure that the IT delivered the maximum profit they could, without any regard for the people using it, then they're not the sort of people that she can work well with. And actually, because of her proposition, they're not the sort of organization that will end up approaching her, because she's declared she wants people to make friends with technology. She wants technology to do good. So I think you can see how building a proposition built upon and building a brand built upon your why can be a very powerful thing. So that's really what I'm hoping that we can go through today. And if you get a powerful proposition, then you've got a great way to maximize your brand awareness. So here's an example of a client we've worked with called Illuminate, creating a mentally healthy workplace. Their proposition is actually the right mind for business. And this came from, again, somebody who came from a broken home, who got involved in helping the mental health of her parents and her siblings. She then got involved in learning about psychology, A-level, ended up doing a degree. And you might think that given that route, she would want to become a psychiatrist or a counselor or something like that. But her drive was actually wanting to have as much or as wide an impact on mental health as she could, not just one individual, but with groups of individuals. And that's how she ended up developing a business that helps other businesses understand how they can see the signs of poor mental health and address them before they become a problem to the individual or the business. And hence the strapline, the right mind for business. So I think, again, you can see another example of how a proposition can drive some very strong marketing. And it can help develop things like very strong social media messages. In this instance, a beauty business where they were targeting not necessarily people who are after the perfect skin, but the best skin that you're in type approach. And that helped guide the choice of imagery here. And it helped guide the sort of campaign messages. And then, of course, also it can help drive meaning into brochures. So this was for an organization that helps large corporates go through big change, usually in connection with IT, but often maybe in connection with mergers and acquisitions. And so it's about how do they help the people within the organization, large numbers of people within an organization, transition from one state to another. So one IT services or one IT solution to another, or one owner to another. And so I think you can see how the brand that we developed for them here helped them achieve and communicate that. So the first thing I'm going to do is, and of course, if we're going into breakout rooms, we're not going to be recorded. So I'm going to ask you to go into a breakout room for 5-10 minutes. And assuming your participants in the breakout room are happy to talk or work with the chat, I think that works in the breakout room. Or even if they don't, have a think for a moment about what your what is. So what do you do? What is it that you do? And don't necessarily be constrained by that desire that we all have to try and get across that all the differences we have to offer. So we do, I often go, well, we do design. Design, and we also do research, and we do proposition building and all. I don't think that really helps people if you try and shove everything. In a way, you have to think about what other people's preconceptions of what you do might be, and even though that might be uncomfortable, that could well be the best way to help those people frame the sort of sector you're in before you then give them the opportunity to understand what difference you have to offer. So if you go into the breakout rooms, which I'll create in a moment, there's going to be a 2 and a 3, and I'll try and mix them up as we go through. Have have a chat with your other participants in the room if they're comfortable doing that. If not, then have a think for yourself what your what is. How would you say to somebody in a dinner party, in a pub who you came across, who said, "What do you do for a living?" What would you say? So I'm going to give you a few moments in a breakout room. Let's see where I can do that. I haven't done this for some time. So breakout rooms. Let's make 2, assign automatically. Okay, so it's Chuvasco, Judith and Zenny in one room, Joanne and Peter in the other. As I say, if your joint participants are happy to engage, that's great. Have a chat amongst yourselves. If not, do just have a think for yourself. I'm opening the rooms now. Okay, so we'll now move on to, surprisingly, your how. Now this again, I think perhaps we'll do this in the room. See if anybody's rather than popping you in there. Although, did anybody get an engagement in the rooms? Because I can reopen them if needs be. Nothing in the chat. Okay, so this next bit is about how you go about doing what you do. How do you do it in a way that is different from your competition? And then we move on to ask, how do you do it in a way that is valuably different? So it's not just being different. You can be different without adding any value, and that gives us no incentive to choose you over a competitor. So it's, what is your valuable difference? And one of our strong beliefs is that because everybody is motivated differently, everybody will have a valuable difference that is marketable, that there will be a market for. Our challenge really is to find out what that valuable difference is. So going back to the example I gave you with the IT business, their valuable difference in terms of how they go about doing what they do is they endeavor to help people make friends with technology. And I think you can see similar differences in the way that people go about what they do. If you compare, for instance, how does Waitrose go about selling groceries against how does Aldi go about selling groceries, or Tesco or Sainsbury's? You know, you might think that the price point for Sainsbury's and Waitrose are similar, and yet they're both able to command a market. And this is because they have a valuably different way in which they deliver their services. And that appeals to different people at different times and in different ways. And as a consequence, they're able to occupy the same sector and still run a successful business. So this is just the same for any of us in terms of competing for business or competing for attention, is finding out the way we go about what we're doing. How is that different and valuably different for the people we work with? I think the most telling thing is for us, when we do customer research for our clients, we're talking to their clients and we're talking to them in an anonymous way so they can talk openly. And we end up finding out things that sometimes are a surprise to the person we're doing the research for, the business we're doing the research for, that they're surprised at the reason why people have made the choice to work with them. So we may have a client that, for instance, is doing so they do risk management. So they do certification for ISO standards for cyber security and that sort of thing. And you might think that perhaps one of the reasons why, or they might think one of the reasons why their customers buy from them is because they're meticulous. They go through every single detail. But our research found out that actually, no, that's not why the customers work with them. It's actually because the customers work with them because they are proportionate in the way they apply that meticulousness. So they help the client do what is necessary for say, achieving the certification or for in their sector abiding by these elements of the certification, because obviously these certifications apply across all sectors, and some industries there are less rigid, there's less requirement to achieve certain standards. So this notion that they took a more human approach came out, and this became part of the way that they then marketed themselves, and that they were the human face of standards, the human face of ISO and certification and things like that. So that's what I wanted to ask you to do, is think about how do you go about what you do in a way that's valuably different from your competitors. So another example, this is a slightly odd one, but have you ever watched somebody who's very adept at a craft doing their craft? And in doing it, so it might be somebody working with leather, or I don't know, a blacksmith or something like that, molding something out of metal, and they do it in quickly, and they do it efficiently, and you might express amazement at, oh, how did you do that? And because they've done it every day for years, it's become second nature, and they don't see it as extraordinary. And yet it is it's that extraordinariness that prompts people to engage with them, or to make the purchase, if you like. So sometimes the extraordinariness goes unseen and you don't realize it. It may be that, well, you have a sense of humor, and that's the reason why people engage with you. So just spend a few moments having a think about that. I will put you into the room, see what happens. 2 or 3 minutes, chat with the other person in the room, either in the chat if that works, or actually with your mics off, or just have a think about it yourself. Think about the way you go about what you do, how people react to you. So what are the more emotive aspects of how you go about doing what you do that could be the reasons why people choose to engage with you? So I'm going to open the rooms again just for 3 or 4 minutes, and have a chat, or have a think for yourself about how you go about doing what you do in a valuably different way. So Joanne and Zenny, I've closed the room, so Judith and Peter will be back with us. Do either of you have any reflections from those few moments? No. Okay. Welcome back, Peter and Judith. Just wondered if you had any reflections from those few moments thinking about your how.
Well, it was like you were saying about the blacksmith or something. Me designing an extension, I don't really know how I do it. It just comes naturally to me.
Yeah. And to me, it's like some form of magic. I've got no idea how you visualize a space or walls that aren't already there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so there's somebody else's view of it, is something from nothing. You know, the what's it called, the white canvas, empty canvas?
Yeah.
Can't remember what it's called.
Blank canvas.
Yeah. Blank canvas, yeah. So that, you know, that's a one perspective on how you could position yourself, is that you can even create something from nothing, or it appears you create something from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And one other way to think about this is to find out about this is, perhaps ask some of your clients directly how they feel the experience was. I mean, when we work for larger organizations, obviously they have more funds and they can get a third party like ourselves to do it. But even if you've got a friend or perhaps a virtual assistant you use who could perhaps ask those questions. And any reflections from you, Judith?
No, I was too interested in extensions.
So, I mean, yours is a very, it's a kind of an intimate thing, isn't it? And I mean, I've worked with, I've been helped by a number of counsellors over the years, and there's a very different style from counsellor to counsellor. And perhaps one of the first ones I engaged with was plainly very heavily on his qualifications, because the wall behind him was covered with all his qualifications.
Yeah.
And yet there's others that are very almost informal, and they don't have any of that sort of structure. Mm-hmm. They arrive at a meeting without any notes or anything like that. And so I think these are some of the features of the way that people might differentiate. So the how there is, in the instance of the guy I first engaged with, was very much about, well, from an academic standpoint, from a proof evidence base, as it were. That's how he's going about his therapy. Whereas somebody who perhaps doesn't lean on that is leaning more on intuition, empathy, insight, that sort of thing. So these all provide us with more descriptive ways of talking about how we go about doing what we're doing, that differentiates it for the people that are considering engaging with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Profiles tend to be very descriptive along those lines.
Okay. So I suppose one of the things we seek to do is, you're never going to get everything into a brand or a brand proposition, but we're trying to get the essence of it, the spirit of it, into a brand proposition. So we would be kind of using all of those descriptions and chunking them down until we came up with a similar to Illuminate's strapline, the right mind for business, where we're trying to convey or create the thought environment where people can realize the valuable difference that's on offer. So it's kind of starts the thinking, gets the intrigue going to get people to engage.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for your engagement. So then obviously the next bit, potentially emotive, is about your why. This, as I say, is the very thing that can drive meaning through how you describe how you go about doing what you do and what you are doing. So I've given you a couple of examples. Let me give you one from my own standpoint, which is we describe what we do now as research, design, and marketing, very much in that order, because we want to find out the reasons behind why people are making the decisions or buying decisions that they're making, in order to help to inform how we go about putting together designing marketing messages that we can use to appeal to people who don't know of the company concerned or the organization concerned, to appeal to them through the dissemination in marketing. So research, design, marketing. Well, that research bit, interestingly, it took me a while to realize this, but comes from, I ended up doing a degree in anthropology, which is about understanding, cultures that do things in a very different way from us. And yet that very different way is still adding function to the society. It's still contributing to the way the society, culture, community works. So it's understanding that different way of doing things, and that came from having been in my parents broke up when I was about 6. They actually broke up with another couple, so they kind of swapped partners. They then got back together again about 3 years later, 2-3 years later. That worked for about 3 or 4 years, and then they split up again with another couple, not another couple, but other people, and remarried. So I was in this sort of flux of family life where there were all different sorts of family units going on, and I was relying on sometimes family friends at school, their families, sometimes my own family, sometimes relatives. So lots of different ways of kind of viewing family life and support and so forth. And I think that's what led me into anthropology. And that then is what led me into this research approach to marketing. So my why was actually quite deep. And, on occasions when I talk about that, it becomes quite emotive, and here comes the I. So it may be you find something in your own past that has affected the way you go about what you do day to day, whether it be at home or in your business professionally, whatever it might be. So that's what I'm inviting you to do now, is to spend 5 minutes having a think about that again. I'll open the, let's see if we can recreate the rooms. I've recreated the rooms. I'm going to reopen them. This is the sort of thing where reflecting by yourself is as good as discussing it, and for many people more comfortable, because you can be talking about personal stuff. So please don't feel you have to engage in the rooms, but use the time in the room to reflect for yourself about how things in your past may well be driving the way you choose to go about your business or your life now. And then if you're happy to share that when I've closed the rooms, then we can have a chat about it. But if you're uncomfortable sharing it, that's fine, and I'll provide you with some tools to help you understand how to use it for benefit in your business. Because you can see, you don't have to reveal your why in order for it to drive value into explaining how you go about what you do and what you actually do. With the examples I've given you, you don't have to mention the why to see that it's brought value to an IT business that wants to help people make friends with it, or to a mental health business that wants to have as wide an impact on as wide a range of people as it possibly can. So I hope you'll see that although you may be going quite deep, it's not something you necessarily have to publicize. Although I have to say, if you are prepared to, it adds great value and credibility to stories. So I'm going to open the rooms. Engage if you want to. Don't engage if you don't want to. Self-reflection is fine. I'll come back in about 4 or 5 minutes. Okay. Joanne and Zenny. I've closed the room, so Judith and Peter will be back with us in a minute. If there's anything you wanted to share about, anything you may have reflected about regarding your why, then please do drop it in the chat, but perfectly understand that you may feel that that's too personal to share, which is fine. Judith, welcome back. Peter will be with us in 15 seconds, maybe sooner. Great, so we're back. So Peter and Judith, I've asked Joanne and Zenny if they wanted to share anything. Judith or Peter, is there anything you wanted to share or reflect on from what you thought or talked about? Do feel free to unmute or pop it in the chat. No, okay. Okay, so we'll move on. So hopefully that's given you some food for thought that can help to bring greater meaning to how you talk about what and how you do what you do. So just to I suppose reiterate the argument that we're making here, that if we can dig deep and understand why we have ended up doing what we are doing, why we've ended up in the role we're doing, or why we've ended up working in the industry we're in, then the argument is that we stand a far better chance of understanding the different way we choose to go around doing that other people find of value and of sufficient value that you've got a marketable proposition. And by understanding that, so the how bit, by understanding that, you can then imbue how you describe what you do with more meaning. So for us, our why is about seeing the value in every individual and organization that we come across. And how we do that is by using research, design, and marketing. So what we do is research and design and marketing. What we do is is effectively marketing. For the IT services business I mentioned earlier, just to go through it again, their why was about having a positive impact on as many people, or as positive impact on anyone that they come into contact with, which meant their how in relation to their IT business was helping people make friends with technology, and their what in connection with IT was helping technology do good. And the beauty about that is that you end up with a proposition that people can read in a number of different ways. Do good might mean profit to give to charity. It might be not for profit. It might be that actually it's only charities that you work for as an IT business. So I think it helps. On the one hand, it helps put out there what's attractive and valuable about what you have to offer, but it also helps define your audience, as it were. It helps define, self-select, if you like, the people that are more likely to approach you, or on seeing your marketing, choose to approach you. So as I said, somebody who's wants to pile produce high, sell it quickly, at whatever price to ensure that they turn as quick a profit as possible, is unlikely to get very much value out of us, because we want to understand the reasons why people make purchasing decisions to help us inform how to inform others that they may well be attracted to this as a product or a service. So there's a self-selection element here. So what I'd encourage you to do after this event, we do try to leave people with some work to do, is to reflect on what you've thought or written about your what, how, and why, and then start with your why. So look at your why and say, how could this possibly be having an impact on the way I choose to go about doing my business? So for me, how did that strange upbringing and anthropology, the interest in other cultures, how did that impact on the way I choose to go about marketing? Well, it's meant I'm interested in the motivations behind why people make buying decisions. I'm interested in understanding that and seeing the complexities in it. And so how does that then have an impact on what I do? Well, it means rather than just doing marketing, rather than just putting ads out there, we want a far stronger rationale, evidence base behind what to put in that marketing before we do it. So that becomes our what. And hopefully you'll see, therefore, that we've got a more valuable proposition to share, and one that helps self-select the sort of people we end up working with. That's the session pretty well over with. We've got 6 minutes spare. Were there any questions or comments that people wanted to shout out or share in the chat? Quite happy to answer any that you may have.